Hi, I'm Karen, and thank you for joining me as we talk more about rulers and rotary cutters and cutting mats and how we cut accurately so we don't get any bowed strips or inaccurate cuts unless we ourselves forget to count what we're doing and put a mark on our ruler. So for this project, I've got about a half a yard of this beautiful Christmas fabric by Riley Blake. I'm on the black side of my cutting mat, and I've got my Creative Grids rotary cutter. I also brought out my two favorite rulers, and I think every beginning quilter needs to have both of these. This is my 12.5 by 12.5 inch Creative Grids square ruler. If you see these dots underneath it, these dots are the grip that is going to keep this ruler from super sliding. There's a lot of rulers that have no grip and that slide, and then there's some that have a film that coats the back of the ruler so that it perfectly stays in place. There are a lot of choices in rulers. You need to find the one that you can see and the one that works for you. When I first started quilting, the store I started in carried the Creative Grids rulers almost exclusively, and that is what I've stuck with, because when I've gone to some of the different brands, I find that I cannot always read the increments and the numbers and my lines. So I do the Creative Grids because they have black lines on the whole numbers and they have white lines on the quarter numbers, and then they also have all the 1/8 and 1/4 inch marks in black as well, so it's easy to see. So 12.5 square, because you can do a lot of different cutting with square, and a lot of quilt patterns require you to square your blocks up to 12.5 inches when you're done sewing them together to go in the block. So we'll do that. And then this one also is a 6.5 by 24 inch. And I like this one because this is easy to manipulate. I think the 8.5 is too wide for my hand, but if you like the 8.5, go ahead and get the 8.5. I just prefer the 6.5 by 12.5. So let's talk about what we're going to do. When I was talking about cutting mats, I mentioned that not every mat has all of the markings, and some have an awful lot of markings. And this mat that I have by Riley Blake has a lot of markings. But I very seldom use those markings unless I am being really, really particular about how I want my fabrics to be. I never use the mat for measuring, because your mat contracts and expands with the heat of your room or the coolness of your room, and then you can have different cuts that don't measure up, and you're like, why don't these match? They should match. It's because you're using your mat, and it's a breathing, living thing. All right, so when I take fabric and I'm going to cut a strip, I will get my selvages together and get them straight. Now, that being said, there are times that I cannot get the selvage to line up 100%. A selvage, S-E-L-V-A-G-E, is the edges of the fabric that are put on the loom, and they usually have this, see how cute that little fuzzy line is right there? We don't want that in our fabric. And then there are holes that go along here. That's where it was, warp threads were attached to the loom, and we don't want that. Now, you can cut your selvage off if you want to make a selvage quilt, and please feel free if you want to do that. I haven't done that. I still use those selvages to help me keep my bearings about where I am, and also so I know what this fabric is, because it will usually tell you on your selvage edge who the manufacturer is. Riley Blake Designs, the pattern number, there's the pattern number, and the name of the fabric, which is Claus & Co., the designer by Melissa, and it's too tiny to read, and 2025 was when she designed this, but it's out for this year. She designed it last year. We're just barely into July, Christmas in July 2026. They have to design months in advance to give us our fabrics for the holidays that we love so much. All right, so let's get going. I teach my students that when you cut your fabric, you're going to cut from the folded edge. Do not cut from the selvage. I cannot promise that the selvage edge right here, is going to be 100% straight. I've had many selvages that after I've starched, they kind of do a scallopy, crooked dance. And the most important thing is to make sure that when it's down here at the fold, everything is laying flat. And when I say that, let me get this off grain a little bit. So while this looks nice and flat down here, I can see that I'm not really lined up here. And sometimes you have to really fiddle with your fabrics. You do a lot of what I call shaky moves to get it to line up and keep this all flat. Now you're going to notice I have already cut off of this, and I've got a little bit of the underside showing in a couple of places, which means I need to re-square my fabric. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to bring my fabric up in half because I don't, while I can cut, right? I've talked about this mat. I can cut this entire length like this because that puts extra pressure on my arm to go that far. And I have a tendency when cutting, my arm goes out instead of staying against the ruler. I'm going to shorten my cut length. So when I have what I think my fabric is all nice and flat and on grain, then I'm going to fold up the edge, and I want to keep it equal distance from the selvage edge. Okay, equal distance from the selvage edge. Now I'm going to take my ruler, and today I'm going to use my 6.5 by 24.5 inch, and I'm going to take a solid black line on my ruler and line it up with the fold of the fabric that I just did. I'm squaring my fabric. I can do this now. It will save me time and make things easier in the long run, or I can just ignore this and start cutting and square up the first cut that I make at the end. But I need to make sure that I'm squaring my fabric and getting it on grain. So we're going to have that lined up. I'm going to make this first cut. I want to make sure that I can see a little bit of both fabrics peeking out here. Now, a special trick that I learned from Donna Jordan is to put a 3-pound weight on the end of the ruler to help stabilize it while I walk my hand, because we never cut beyond our hand. I also talk to people about doing a spider, because I played the piano and I've said do a spider and keep your pinky here. I love that we can learn new things, and I just learned a new thing. That's what makes this exciting. And it also explains why I might have pain in my left hand thumb. This position puts a lot of strain, and this is how I was taught, was to do it in this position. This puts a lot of strain on this thumb joint right here and can cause tendonitis or other fun things. So put your hand flat, but keep your pinky or your ring finger and your pinky holding your ruler. Make sure your thumb is not extended on the other side, and then go ahead and cut. And we're going to get our blade right next to the ruler, and I'm going to start a little bit before my fabric starts, because if I start cutting up here, this very end folded edge of my fabric will not cut. Okay, so we're going to go, and we're going to go to our fingertips. I'm going to stop and walk my hand up, flatten it back down, and cut. And because I have the weight there, that's going to help keep that ruler really nice and stable. And now that my fabric is squared up, I can flip my fabric over just like this, and I am ready, because I know this first cut right here is nice and straight, to cut my next strip, whatever that strip's going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and do a 3.5 inch strip, and I'm going to line up again the bottom. I mean, it's hard to see on this black, so let's lift it up. I've got this black line right here that I'm going to put along the bottom fold, and this is my 3.5 inch line. It's in black on the Creative Grids ruler as well, facing me, so that that lines up that piece of fabric. I've got it all the way down. I just moved it all the way down the side, and here I know I'm square, and I'm not going to get a bow in my fold right here, which happens a lot, and people wonder why, and that is why. Because they have not folded their fabric straight and nice. Okay, again, start beyond the fabric down here, put my blade against it, and make sure that I keep my hand going straight up. Don't let your hand arc, because that was, when I realized that's what I was doing, that was one of the biggest things that fixed my inaccuracy. Let's check and see if we've got a straight cut. Da, da, da. So far, so good. Look at that. There is no bowing on that fold. And when I say bow, it doesn't dip down. It goes straight across. So this piece is ready to go in whatever scrap project I'm ready to put it in. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll work more on cutting in the Cut, Sew, Grow Club, and I look forward to having you join me. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.